Welcome to Soul to Soul. I'm your host, James LaValle, and my wife, Kathy LaValle.
Hello.
Today, we're going to discuss the third phase of cosmic consciousness, and that would be being divine, or in simpler terms, maintaining a steady state of consciousness. But before we get started with that, if you happen to miss the previous two episodes, phase one covered the spiritual high, or the awakening experience that you may have had, or simple aha moment that brought you to become aware. Phase two was the conscious awareness, changing your perception about your environment, people around you. So let's get on with the topic at hand today, maintaining a steady state of consciousness. Kathy, would you help us with that?
Okay. Well, the third phase of a cosmic consciousness is where you start becoming divine. You start practicing being divine in your life. And it's called a steady state of consciousness because you're maintaining a balance within your life. In the first two phases, you've experienced your spiritual high, feeling good about whatever newfound oneness experiences you've had with the universe, with the Creator, and so you're also learning during phase two to change your perceptions. You're working with your ego. You might be clearing out some things, some old past issues in your life, and so all those things were kind of going on during the first two phases, and so the third phase is maintaining the steady state of consciousness, and it's a time where you're kind of transitioning back into the world. During phase one, phase one or two, there may have been some time where you felt like you were kind of separate from the world, although you're still trying to see the big picture and feel like you're a part of a whole. There's still a certain sense of separateness that you might feel. And during phase three, you kind of want to get back into I'll call it getting back into the real world. And it might mean that you're more present in your job, more present in family activities. You're more conscious of what social expectations are put on you. And it's not that necessarily you were away from all these things. A lot of people carry on with daily activities quite well. But there's still a certain sense of separateness that you feel. And coming back into the real world and becoming and acting what your belief systems are can be difficult at times.
Let me ask, and just for purpose of clarity here, phase one and two is kind of like are you in a state of mind that I've got to be conscious of how I am around my quote-unquote friends and coworkers, and I don't want to be too perceived as being too far out there? That's a good point, because during those phases it's very common that you are starting to be seen as different, and if you make too radical of changes, sometimes it can result in possibly even a job loss, or your circle of friends might suddenly become smaller. So as you learn to balance your spiritual high with your newfound beliefs, the newfound perceptions that you may have about yourself and things in your environment, it becomes more balanced. So you might want to transition back into the real world. And so phase three basically is the balancing, the transitioning back and getting life in balance with those that you work with and those friends that you have?
Your family, yeah, because when you're doing a lot of self-discovery, it's just natural to want to put some focus on your own needs. And you know, when you're not taking care of everybody else all of a sudden, especially your family, it's like, but Mom, you're always gone, you're always doing this. I mean, that can happen a lot. And the needs of the family, not that they don't get taken care of, it's just that when all of a sudden a parent decides to focus on themselves and maybe do some work to clear out some past issues or something, other people can see that maybe as being somewhat self-centered. So you transition back to where you realize that the focus doesn't have to be on me anymore because I've kind of worked out some things. So it can be, sometimes it can be a difficult adjustment. For some people it could go quite smoothly. So you're starting to apply what you know to your reality. So that's where the becoming part becomes into play. You're acting the role of the divine. You're starting to show it in your actions, in how you speak. People might perceive you as being a little bit more calmer.
Starting to walk the talk?
Yeah, exactly. In your actions, in your behaviors, how you interact with other people. It's also a time when you might feel that you don't have to seek as much as you used to. During phase, well, definitely phase 1 and phase 2, there's a lot of seeking going on. You're wanting knowledge, and sometimes it's hitting you real fast. And I think during phase 3 that it becomes more balanced.
Yeah, I feel it's the balance is there in phase 3. You no longer are doing the intensive seeking that you'd had prior, but in turn, the knowledge that you're seeking is not necessarily that of commonplace as to what you may find on the bookshelves, as we may have discussed in previous episodes. But outside the box type thinking, and it's just one of those times that you realize that I can start implementing what it is that has brought me to the state that I'm presently holding.
And it also could be a time where you have pulled away from some of those mass media things, and you may have even discovered a particular master or teacher to work with. So you might be under very close direction from somebody that has come to you and presented themselves to you. So it's a time when you're making commitments. You're really fulfilling those commitments that you made for self-love. And directing your thoughts and actions away from what the ego wants. You're balancing out the ego. So you're directing the thoughts and actions away from what the ego wants, and you're focusing a lot on the self and keeping the ego in balance. So there's still work to be done, but it's probably not required as much. I mean, keeping the ego in check is definitely a full-time job, no matter what level you're at, but it can also be a time, we call it the make or break period, because you are changing. A lot of your perceptions have changed. A lot of things in your life may have changed. People may have come and gone out of your life. It can be a tough period because there isn't as much out there that you can get involved in the way you may have used to. Such as, one thing that kind of naturally happens when you start getting a higher consciousness is some of the addictive things that you used to be involved in may no longer be necessary. It may not be that you've necessarily made an effort to stop doing something, let's say like stop smoking or stop drinking, you may not have gone through any programs to stop that. It's just that suddenly you find yourself not needing some of those things maybe that you used to rely on for comfort or
Right.
whatever.
It's almost like an automatic event that takes place once you reach that level.
It can be automatic, yeah. I mean, some may have to really make a conscious effort to work at it and you know, enact some discipline, but for other people, it's not that you see those necessarily as bad things anymore in your life. It's just that you feel that they're just not necessary for me. It's not required that I maybe take a drink to feel good. I'm already feeling good. I don't need that. And you can also learn to have some experiences maybe that you've never really had before without something to stimulate your
Artificial stimulant.
Yeah. So it can be a natural process for those things to happen. So, but at the same time, there's also a part of you that isn't there anymore. You may have found yourself attending a lot of events where drinking was very
Social.
common. Yeah,
it was a
I mean,
social
it was something
event.
you did, and it still is very social that people drink. And you might not want to be in that energy anymore. You might, just because you are different. I mean, let's face it, someone that's had a couple of drinks is different than someone who hasn't. I mean, if it wasn't that way, then there wouldn't be laws against operating motor vehicles. So there is a difference. So you may find that there's less things out there that entertain you in a social way. So we call it the make or break it period, because you could very easily decide that, you know, if you're a very social person, going back to that lower energy could become more important to you than maintaining your steady state and being different. So it can be a very trying period for you.
Correct me if I've got this misunderstood here, but the phases that we're discussing could almost be construed as a pie cut into 4 segments, since we have 4 phases.
Yeah.
And the slice of the pie gets pretty thin once you reach the higher segments of the phases that we're speaking of, as far as what appeals to you before, what had appealed to you in the past does not appeal to you now, or you tolerate it because you need to be in that environment because of your job, because of whatever that may have you need to be in that position. But it's all a trying phase. I mean, and this growth that we're talking about is not as easy as ABC. There are times that are really going to be struggling for you. And for this growth to continue, it's all going to be how determined are you to reach this level of awareness, maintain the steady state of conscious growth is what we're talking about here. And how important is that to reach that high state of consciousness?
So it can be a tough period where you are still kind of toying between different energy vibrations.